What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about are all Norwegians really introverts? This question kind of stems from this idea that Norwegians, unlike Americans, honestly, it's kind of a comparison to Americans who are very loud and boisterous and friendly and want to talk all the time, and compared to Norwegians who, from what I have heard, can be more, have more of a thick shell. They don't, it's all about respect, basically, right? Out of respect, Norwegians are not going to just bother you and ask you lots of questions, and they're going to keep a bigger amount of personal space and respect your space and your privacy and all sorts of stuff like that, basically, which many people, especially Americans, interpret as, oh, that means they're introverts. Norwegians are introverts. Whereas I'm not so sure that is what it means. And that goes the same with with this Reddit discussion that I found, where this user claims Norwegians are not all introverts. So I thought this would be a very fun kind of discussion to look at to really hear out the case for, well, Norwegians have a lot of behaviors that some might say are introverted behaviors, but that does not mean they're all introverts. And I think there are lots of interesting insights to that in this discussion. Living in Norway for 2 months, I've had way more random people starting to talk to me on the street than in my 20 years living in Poland. Oh, many people perceive Norwegians as introverts because they compare them only with highly extroverted nations. Yes. Yeah, I think that's true. I think Norwegians are compared to very extroverted nations like the UK or America, where people just will talk to you about anything. People will bug you about anything, and I think Norwegians are a lot more respectful about that. But it's not out of being introverted. It's about respect, I think. Those were just decoys put on the streets to keep tourists from talking with actual people. Okay, so the first comment is just a troll. So the original person here is saying, well, I lived in Norway for 2 months, and my experience was plenty of Norwegians talk to me. And this person says they're decoys. Let's keep going. Doesn't really matter if you are an introvert or extrovert. In Norway, people just prefer personal space. Exactly. Exactly. It's just like, and I like that. I really like that, honestly. Like, just because you're giving people their space doesn't mean you're shy or you don't want to be friendly. It just means, like, respecting the personal space. I really like that, honestly. Um, Many Norwegians eagerly jump on the chance to talk with strangers. In the gym, for example, this week, I asked someone between sets and we started talking about training. Okay, yeah. I think I think when the situation is like organic and natural and there's like some kind of productive natural conversation that could happen, Norwegians are very willing to talk and be friendly and open. But if there's nothing really there, like organic or natural or comfortable, then unlike Americans, Norwegians will politely keep to themselves. And like again, I kind of like that. Honestly, I like it. You sure they weren't drunk? Is that the other way to get Norwegians to be friendly, overly friendly, extroverted? If they're drunk, you sure they weren't drunk? LOL, that was my exact thought. Okay. Okay. Norwegians have to be drunk to be extroverted. Okay, sure. Uh, Talking to a Danish person living in America. I know, not the same as Norwegian, but not too dissimilar culture. He said Americans appear friendly on the outside, but are insincere. Wow. Wow, that's a good point as well. because Americans will like try to strike up and talk about like just anything, stuff that doesn't even make sense or just stuff they're wondering about or really for no reason sometimes. And it can be insincere. It's almost just talking to talk. So, like for that, because they want to talk and they don't even really care what you have to say, that can definitely happen. So, this is an interesting insight. Americans are talking more, but maybe insincere, whereas when Norwegians talk, it's meaningful. It means something, and it's like sincere and serious. That's probably true. It's probably true on average. Like people would say they should go golfing and never actually planned to golf, or get a coffee but never follow through. Huh. He found it weird that people would make offers that they didn't intend to keep. Interesting. So Americans are more flaky with keeping plans as well. Like, yeah, it is kind of like being fake nice. Like, oh man, I loved seeing you. I loved meeting you. We should get coffee sometime. And then they never talk to you again. That's definitely an American thing. Yeah, that's true. He also said that small talk for no reason isn't something he encountered until America. Yes, I hate a lot of Americans really hate this about America. A lot of people feel like to be comfortable, you have to talk. Like if you're alone or you're in an elevator or on a bus, like Americans are very uncomfortable with silence. Americans are very uncomfortable if no one's talking, whereas I feel like Norwegians just are comfortable existing next to each other. And so people like Americans look at that and they're like, oh, they're so introverted, they're so quiet. And it's just not true. It's actually like better, more authentic. Americans like small talk for no reason. That is definitely true. Wow. Wow. There's some truth in this stuff, for real. As a Norwegian moving to Germany, I concur. Norwegians are absolutely not introverted. I think they are, but Norwegians are so nice and willing to help. Germans are just mean introverts. Okay, let's don't need to get into that too much. Um yeah, but once you strike up a conversation with Norwegians, and every time I've heard about Norwegians helping Americans, it has always been the kindest, most generous things I've ever heard. Norwegians offering their home and their help and all sorts of stuff like that. Yeah. Whereas Americans might talk to you more, but they're not going to be as friendly and helpful and generous, probably, even though they're talking more. It's fun. This is very interesting. This is actually turning into kind of a Norwegian versus American like comparison about what it means to be an introvert and extrovert and like who is more authentic. That's kind of what this is turning into. It's interesting. It's interesting to compare. Difficult. Firstly, it depends where you are. If you're in a small place, people are much more outgoing. It's not that people are unfriendly or introverted. It's just it's just that becoming an intimate acquaintance, you could say, can be challenging. Yeah, like that I've heard many times now is it's more difficult to become close friends with Norwegians than Americans. But once you are close friends with a Norwegian, they are much more loyal. It's a much more meaningful connection, a much more meaningful friendship or relationship, and intimate. And then Norwegians are very open and not introverted at all. So honestly, that's arguably better, isn't it? To be a little more thick-skinned, but then once you crack it, it's a lot more meaningful. Yeah, true. Um, getting to the stage where someone would ask you for a coffee. A friend was rather grumpy about this, and there was a saying that you are more likely to see the inside of the palace than the inside of a Norwegian's home. Okay. Okay, it's tough to make it's more difficult to make a meaningful close Norwegian connection, but once you do, it's very meaningful. And in America, people tend to have a lot more surface level relationships. That's for sure. For the last 3 years in Norway, my houseboat is an open door. Anyone can stop for a visit, and it has been great. Met a lot of locals. At my place, friends can bring friends over. Things just need to be clean and tidy. Yeah, I've heard a lot of Norwegians be very generous with opening their house and opening their doors to people, whereas in America, people are very reluctant to let you even though you are friendly, letting you into their home is they won't necessarily do that because they're not quite as authentically friendly in a way. This is a generalization, of course. There's obviously super nice, super generous Americans as well, but this is like a generalization, comparison, basically. What else we got here? I've not had anyone approaching me or anything like that. I'm coming up on my 3rd month now. Okay, so this person is talking about the original post. Like, the original discussion was this person saying they've lived in Norway for 2 months and they're having a lot of random people talk to them on the street, which does sound a little unusual to me. And then this person is saying, I've been living in Norway for 3 months and I haven't had anyone approaching me. So, two different experiences here, basically. I wonder what would determine that. Why Norwegians would approach one person a lot more or one person a lot less, or if it's just luck. I have been living in Norway for 6 months. I've gotten 2 local strangers approaching me and tried to talk, mostly old ladies. It was kind of nice to have some interaction. Okay. So, yeah, Norwegians will walk up to you randomly on the street and talk about things. It just seems like it has to be authentic. There has to be something real, something meaningful to strike up a conversation about, something just like authentic that you're interested in. And I like that. I think that's so much better, so much more real. Whereas Americans are very good at just talking about nothing important, making small talk, basically. And it's kind of fake now that I think about it. uh, when I first moved here, I approached some Norwegian locals at a music festival and regret it because they rejected me. But yeah, there's that risk, I guess. It's like you might try to go out on a limb and talk to Norwegians at a music festival, and you might not get accepted into the friend group immediately. And that's normal. It's just and this person had their feelings hurt. So it's just a difference in culture. That's all it is. I know not all are like that, but I am still traumatized. All I wanted was to have a friendly conversation. After that, I learned to enjoy my own company. I made some friends, but we don't share the same interests. Huh. Well, honestly, that just sounds like you can't just, no matter where you are, you can't just expect to walk up to strangers and become their friend. It takes time. You might have a little more success in America, but I totally don't think that's unreasonable, to be honest. Um, Based on this data, Norway is still more introverted than extroverted, but Finland, Chile, Lithuania, and Poland are far more introverted. Yeah, it's all a scale, isn't it? Basically, what I'm getting here is what I overall am seeing is Norway is a little more introverted than America, maybe a lot more introverted than America, but Norway is still more extroverted than a lot of other countries. It's almost like this perfect middle ground. Norway has like this perfect balance of not going to bother you, but will still strike up a friendly, meaningful conversation when there's something important to talk about. And you might even become friends over time, and it'll be a very close, meaningful relationship. That's basically what I'm hearing, as if we're going to define this scientifically. And I think that's great. I think that's a wonderful culture. Um, you're not culturally obliged to engage in small talk with strangers, but if you meet someone several times, or you're hiking, or you look like you have time to talk, people may chat with you. Yeah, so if basically Norwegians are very respectful, they don't want to waste your time. Um, and also, I've heard this before. If you're going hiking, if you Norwegians are much more likely to talk to each other if you're hiking. I guess because you are out in the wilderness in a private setting, and you're kind of sharing this connection over both hiking. So I have heard that before. That's funny. If uh, if you really want to strike up a conversation with a Norwegian, just go hiking. That's the secret. That's the secret. Agreed. I think it's annoying stereotype. That's not true. And I think many Norwegians believe we are introverts compared to Brazil, but even there, it's completely normal to spread out on the bus until forced to sit together. Huh. Maybe like a few exotic places where they're actually just sit beside someone random. Oh, this is specifically talking about making space on the bus, which is one of the most famous, most commonly pointed to things to say, oh, Norwegians are introverted. Look how they give each other space on the bus. They won't even sit next to each other. That's not necessarily introverted. That's respectful. I think it's different. That's the thing. Um, Maybe Norwegians were drunk, or maybe you're hot. You're right. To the first person who started this discussion, they're like, why do so many Norwegians come up to me? They were either drunk or you're really good looking. That's that's the reason. I wish. Introverted versus private. Exactly. Exactly. Norwegians are more private and more respectful and want more meaningful interactions. It's not necessarily introverted. Yeah. This is part of culture shock. When you move to another country, you do actually meet a lot of people. Yeah, maybe some people were just talking to this original poster because they are a foreigner and they just wanted to ask questions. Um, where do you live? One of the major cities or a smaller place? People in villages are known to be more talkative. Okay. Oh, yeah. So if you go to a small Norwegian village or a small Norwegian town, you're much more likely to have someone who recognizes that you're from out of town or wants to talk to you as a foreigner or ask you questions, or it's just more private, it's more intimate. So Norwegians are more likely to ask you something, basically. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Although the person says they're from Oslo, which kind of is the total opposite of a small town. I think Norwegians seem introverted in comparison to people from larger, more populous nations. But in my experience, the average Norwegian is anything but introverted. They just like their personal space. There you go. I think that is basically very accurate. Norwegians are a different culture and like their personal space. It's not that they don't want to talk to you, they just like their space and privacy. Right, but even if it's 10 random conversations, It's still 10 people out of a country with 5.5 million people. Okay. I mean, congrats on the interactions, but you're still new here? Okay, so maybe they're saying maybe this person is overemphasizing the interactions or something like that. It has become our thing at this point, being introverted. Doesn't apply to everyone. And yes, like you say, there are many extroverted people in Norway. That's a good thing to point out too, is like anywhere in the world, there are going to be Norwegians who are introverted and some who are more extroverted. It's a scale, it's a spectrum. But I think the important thing about this discussion is we're saying not all. Most people look at Norwegians and they're like, oh yeah, Norwegians are very introverted, very shy, very keep. And I think that's been blown out of proportion. I think that is not accurate. I think Norwegians are respectful. They want their personal space, privacy, and they want meaningful, deep connections that mean something, which is all very good qualities. I actually really, really like all that about Norwegian culture, to be honest. So, anyway, I enjoyed this discussion. I thought this was a really interesting topic and a very, very true, sort of common stereotype about Norwegians that I wanted to delve deeper into and kind of debunk a little bit. And I think a lot of these comments kind of back that up and shed some insight. So I enjoyed this. I enjoyed this. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Norway, Norwegian culture, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thank you for watching and see you next time.